Welcome back to my channel, and I just wanted to film a quick introduction for this video. So in this video I am going to be reading a few different Valentine's Day novellas and reviewing them for you, sharing my thoughts and feelings on them. So I've got, I think in the end I ended up reading 11 for this video. 11 different novellas from different authors. Some I've read from before, I think. Actually, no, all of these were new to me. Oh no, one of them I had read from before. So these are all pretty much new to me authors, with the exception of one that I had read from before. And these are all novellas. There are a couple that are slightly over the 200-page mark, which is where I would usually classify a novella as. So they were slightly longer, but they were still under the 250-page mark. So they're not quite a full-length book, so I would still classify them as novellas. And I'm going to share with you my thoughts and feelings on all of these, and I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you in my next clip where I update you on the first one that I read. So I am about halfway through Little Lies and Valentines by Lachelle Rain, and so far I am enjoying it. So it is, as I say, a stalker novella. At the start of the book we see this guy who is burying a dead body in the park, and as he's leaving the park he runs into our main female character Abby, and he is instantly attracted to her. There is something about her that he finds really attractive, and he follows her out of the park, and she goes back to this coffee shop, and it's clear that she's had someone hit her. She's got bruising on her face, and that's where the obsession starts for the hero, and he starts leaving flowers and notes for her, and they exchange this back and forth, and she finds it very appealing that there is a stalker, or that she has a stalker. She's not in the least bit concerned. She finds it a massive turn on that this guy is stalking her and always watching her. And she started dating this guy called Alex, and it's quite obvious that Alex is going to be the stalker, but she does not know at this stage that he is the stalker. So she's having interactions with her stalker. He wears a mask to hide his identity whilst also dating Alex, but it's obviously the same person. So obviously she's going to figure out that Alex is the stalker at some point. I don't know if that's going to cause some conflict, but so far it's pretty good. I have noticed that there have been a few like grammar errors in this book, particularly in the first couple of chapters. There were a couple of grammar errors where I had to kind of reread the sentence because the words were a little bit jumbled up, and it didn't quite make... I could work out what was supposed to be being said, but obviously what was actually there didn't make sense. So I have noticed that, so bear that in mind when you're going into it. There, as I say, there are a few grammar errors, but other than that, so far I am enjoying it. It is quite a dark romance. We've just had a scene where the stalker Alex is torturing and killing two guys who hit on Abby in the street, and it's quite graphic, so if that is something that you don't enjoy then you might not like this. But so far, as I say, I'm enjoying it, and we will see where the rest of the next 50% goes. As I say, Abby's going to find out about Alex's identity at some point, and I just don't know whether that is going to cause a conflict or she's going to be fine. Eventually she's obviously going to be fine with it, but I don't know if that's going to cause like them to break up or anything. With it being a novella, if they do break up, the getting back together is going to happen very quickly, which doesn't always work for me. So we'll see how the rest of it goes, and I will update you once I have finished. Just finished reading Little Lies and Valentines by Lachelle Rain, and I thought I'd just update you on my final thoughts on this one. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5, rounded down to a 3-star on Goodreads. So this one, as I said in my last clip, this one is a stalker romance, and the first 50% I would say I quite enjoyed, and then the last 50% I didn't like as much. So it got quite dark. We know from the beginning that our hero is not opposed to killing people, and he ends up roping in Abby into killing her ex, who's been abusive to her, which she almost feels no remorse for. And I felt that it was a little bit out of character for her. It almost kind of came out of nowhere. He takes her down to his basement in his house and says, you know, here's this guy, you can kill him. And she doesn't really even seem to think about, like, this is really weird, like, I'm not going to do this. Her immediate thought is, yeah, okay. And it just, I don't know, it felt a little bit like in character for him, but like out of character for her. So I didn't love the last 50% of this one. Also, as I say, it does get quite dark and quite graphic as well, so if that is something that you don't enjoy, then you won't like this one. That didn't bother me too much. I just didn't like the way the story progressed. Like, I was fine with him doing that sort of stuff, but then when he involved her, it just, I don't know, it didn't quite read right in terms of how I thought her character would behave. So that's why I gave it a 3.5. So I finished reading Cupid's Shot by Serena Peer, and I gave this one 3 stars. I liked it, but I didn't love it. So this one is about Sarah and Aaron, and they went to school together, and it's now years later, and Sarah has recently moved back to town, and her friends go out to a bar, and they are hosting a Valentine's Day event where Aaron is dressed up as Cupid. He's wearing angel wings, and her friends make some jokes about getting pictures taken with him, and Sarah ends up getting some drinks delivered to her from a secret admirer, and it turns out that the secret admirer is Aaron, and they go on quite a few dates quite quickly. They go on, I think, about 3 dates, one after the other, and they very quickly fall for each other. This was an okay novella. It was, you know, a quick, easy read. Obviously, because it is novella, this one did definitely fall into the kind of insta-love category. They, you know, went on quite a few dates very quickly after one another, and they fell for one another quite quickly. So that's why I didn't give it higher than a 3-star. But overall, it was a good read. When I was reading this one, the bit about the friends taking pictures with Cupid in the bar, I was like, oh, this reminds me of another book. And it turns out that I've actually read the first book in this series, which is called Santa's Coming, which basically had a very similar premise in terms of they were in a bar and the hero was dressed up as Santa. And obviously the romance element was different, but the actual way that the hero and heroine met was similar. And then there is a third book in this series, which is centered around St. Patrick's Day. I assume, in fact, I think looking at it, there's actually 6 books, but I know the third one is definitely St. Patrick's Day, and I assume that one of the guys is maybe going to be dressed up as a leprechaun or something, I don't know. I might check out the rest of the series just because they are quick, easy reads, and, you know, it's always nice to have a quick, easy read with a novella. So I finished reading Valentine for My Vampire by Honey Phillips, and I really enjoyed this one, and I gave this one 4 stars. So this one is book 6 in the Fairhaven Falls series, and I'm intrigued by this series, and I'm going to go back and read some of the other books in this series. So Fairhaven Falls is a small town which is full of supernatural creatures. So in this one we had a vampire, but there's werewolves, orcs, brownies, lots of different supernatural characters that live in this small town, and humans are aware of the supernatural's existence. So in this one we follow, what was her name? Let me just quickly look it up. I'm terrible with remembering the names. Wendy. So Wendy is a human, and she is a food blogger, and she visits Fairhaven Falls to visit one of the restaurants in Fairhaven Falls, which is owned by our hero Damien, who is a vampire. And she goes into the restaurant and she gives it a not very favourable review. When she's there, she doesn't have a very good time. The food's not very good, and so she gives a bad review on her blog. She is then invited back to revisit the restaurant, and she goes back to the town. Damien is quite intrigued by her, and there is something going on at the restaurant. She thinks it might be ghosts that are haunting the restaurant and causing him to have all these issues, and it is their romance. I thought this was really fun, this was really cute, and there is a bit of steam in this one. It's not the most steamiest of steamiest of novellas that I've ever read, but there is steam there, and I, as I say, really enjoyed it. I love the small town aspect. Small town romance is one of my favourite subgenres, and this really had that sense of small town life in terms of everyone knowing each other, everyone getting on, everyone mixing together. Really enjoyed it. The romance I thought was really good, and the kind of plot of the ghosts was well done as well. So overall, I did really enjoy this one, and I'm excited to go back and check out other books in this series. I'm not sure how many there are in the series, but I'm going to go back and read them all. I think looking at it, there's like 9 in the series, so plenty to go back and read from, and they're all short novellas, so definitely going to check those out at some point. So I've just finished reading Valentine's with the Silver Fox by Ava Gray, and I gave this one a 2.5 stars rounded up to a 3 on Goodreads, and this one I didn't love. So premise wise, I really liked the premise. I just didn't like the execution. So in this one we follow James, who is, I think he's 45, and then we have our heroine who is called Ivy, and she is, I don't think her age is explicitly said, but she is late 20s, like late 20s, early 30s, so there's a bit of an age gap. And at the beginning of the book, James is married to a woman called Barbara, and they have been going through some difficulties, and he has hired Ivy because she is a wedding planner. He has hired her to plan a vow renewal for him and Barbara, and he very much wants to fix their marriage at the start of the book. But Barbara has other ideas, and at the beginning of the book, Barbara leaves the marriage, and just as Ivy's turned up to start her work on planning the vow renewal, and James decides that instead of dismissing Ivy, he is going to hire her to plan other parties for him through the season. I think the book starts at the beginning of maybe like November, so she plans like a Thanksgiving party and a Christmas party for him, and he decides to keep her on. He is very wealthy, he's a tech billionaire, and he's got a lot of money, so he decides to keep her on, and he moves her into his house, and he's quite attracted to her from the start, and she is attracted to him as well, and quite quickly they end up getting together. And very early on, when they first get together, it is unprotected, and the first thoughts that Ivy has is, oh my god, I'm gonna get pregnant, blah 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 blah, and that is one of the first thoughts that she thinks of. And she does even there is a moment where she kind of says, oh well, I could go and get the morning after pill, and then for whatever reason she doesn't end up going to get the morning after pill, but she kind of continuously thinks, oh my god, I'm going to be pregnant, blah blah blah. And we obviously eventually do find out that she is pregnant, and she finds out quite early on that she is pregnant, and they are still interacting. They have quite a few moments together, and she does not tell him, and she does not tell him about the pregnancy until, I would say it was about 90% of the way through when he finds out. And she is very much worried about telling him because she thinks that he's going to think that she's kind of trapped him, because she knows that he would want to do the right thing. So she is reluctant to tell him, and that's one of her reasons for not telling him. And all the time he is very much falling for her. He's like in love with her all of a sudden. And when she tells him, his reaction is just like, okay. Like, he does not seem to like fazed by it at all, which is unusual. I was expecting the pregnancy to be revealed earlier on in the story and for it to be kind of a conflict between the two, but it really isn't, which was unusual. I personally thought, when I read the synopsis for this one and saw that it was surprise pregnancy, I thought that that was going to be a bigger part of the story. But as I say, we don't find out, he doesn't find out until like the last 10%. And we do get an epilogue at the end where we see the baby and they're getting married. But it wasn't quite what I was expecting. And I felt that although it's quite a short story, it did drag in places. And I didn't like that she didn't tell him sooner. I did kind of understand the reasoning behind the fact that she didn't tell him, but I think she should have told him sooner, especially as she kind of had that thought almost like the next day after they'd been together, and I think she should have discussed it with him. But yeah, so I didn't love this one. I think there are other books by this author that I'm interested in, so I might pick up something else from her in the future, but this one, it just didn't quite work for me. I think the way that the surprise and accidental pregnancy element was handled wasn't my favourite. As I say, I would have preferred to have seen her find out that she's pregnant and telling him like quite early on, and then them working like together and figuring out what they're going to do. But that is not really part of the story. There isn't really much discussion of how are we gonna, you know, work with this baby, you know, how are we gonna work, how is our relationship going to work with this baby, because obviously their relationship is very new. It's not even a relationship at this point. It very much feels just like a physical thing, even though both of them seem to be in love with each other, but it has been a very short space of time, which personally isn't my favourite, and sometimes that is why novellas can be a bit hit or miss, because that kind of falling for each other, it happens so quickly in novellas. So yeah, this one wasn't for me, but I am excited to move on to the next one. I have two more novellas to update you on that I've read. The first one was His Runaway Valentine by Cassie Hart, and this one I didn't love and I gave it 2 stars. So in this one we follow Willow and Rowan. Willow works in a coffee shop that is managed by her best friend, and her best friend has recently gone through a breakup, and she wants to host, instead of a Valentine's promotion in the coffee shop, she wants to host an anti-Valentine's Day promotion, and she is helping her friend to set that up when one day the boss of the coffee chain comes into the store and puts a stop to it, and the boss turns out to be Rowan, who is Willow's best friend's brother, and he says that anti-Valentine's Day is not going to be a very good promotion. So he says, no, we're not doing that. And Willow decides, because her friend is quite upset about this, she is going to go to speak to Rowan to try and get him to allow the anti-Valentine's Day promotion to go ahead. So she goes to see him, and he kind of basically says, I'll let you do it if you spend the night with me. And it is basically them getting together, and premise of that sounds fine, and I was enjoying it up until the last portion. So it's where it gets a bit messy. So they have been spending time together, and Willow is over at Rowan's house, and she gets a call in the middle of the night saying that someone's trying to break into the coffee shop. And she goes to the coffee shop, and there is this guy there who turns out to be her uncle, who wants to basically kidnap her because her dad was some sort of criminal, and her uncle thinks that her dad left her loads of money, which he didn't. And the ending of this just got very, very muddled and it was very rushed. Obviously it's a novella, so it's short, but the ending was really rushed, and this kind of almost subplot kind of came out of nowhere. It was hinted at that she had secrets in her past, and then it just kind of came out of nowhere. So I really didn't end up liking this one, so that's why I gave it only 2 stars. The next novella that I have to update you on is Naughty Valentine by Amity Malcolm, and this one is a FF romance, and we follow Valentine Love, who has a bit of a ridiculous name. She is born on Valentine's Day and her parents called her Valentine Love, and she is invited to go out with her friend to a club to celebrate her birthday, but this is not like a regular club. In this club they are going to be doing a demonstration of shibari, and the person leading the demonstration also has a ridiculous name, and she is called Candy Hart, and she was also born on Valentine's Day, and they have kind of an instant connection, and Candy is the one leading the demonstration, and she asks Valentine to be the person that she demonstrates on, and it goes from there. So this is very much a steamy, spicy novella. That is pretty much all there is to it. There's not a lot of plot, but I did like this one. I haven't read too many FF romances. I've read a few, but I always enjoy reading more, and this one was really good. As I say, if you're looking for a short, spicy read to read for Valentine's Day, this one is a good option. There's not too much in the way of plot, and if you can get past the ridiculous names, this one is a good fun time. One of the better ones I've read for this video for sure. So I have another novella to wrap up for you, and this one is called Be Mine, Twisted Valentine by Gianni Holmes, and this one is an novella and is part of a series of books called Corrupt Cupid. This is a series written by multiple different authors, and I think they are all romances, so if you're looking for some romances, this series might be one to check out. I will preface this by saying that this particular novella is very dark, and I would recommend reading the triggers for this book. The author lists them at the beginning of the book. So if you are someone that is easily triggered by things, I would definitely recommend checking them out. So the premise of this one is we have Duncan and Teddy, and 15 years ago Duncan's brother was shot down by the chief of police, who happens to be Teddy's father, and Duncan is very upset about this, and to get his revenge he decides to kidnap Teddy. So he kidnaps him and takes him to a cabin in the woods and tortures him, but they also have a physical relationship as well, and that was never Duncan's intention when he went into it, but a physical relationship did develop during the time that he had Teddy in captive, and then Duncan does get charged for kidnapping him, so he spends time in jail. And we now fast forward to 15 years later, and Duncan is out of jail, and Teddy has moved on with his life, or so he thinks. He's got a wife who is expecting a child, but he keeps thinking about Duncan, and they end up going back to one another and starting up their relationship again. This is a very, as I say, dark romance. The relationship is very toxic. Obviously it started as because Duncan kidnapped him, so there is that element to it, but I did enjoy the writing of this one, and the element of it worked really well. As I say, it is a dark romance, so be aware of that going into it, but I thought this was good. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm definitely interested to check out more from this author, and I potentially will read other books from this series. This one is also available on Kindle Unlimited, and I would recommend checking it out if you are looking for a darker romance and an romance. I don't read a lot of MMs, to be honest. I usually prefer FFs over MMs, but this one was good and worth a read if you are looking for that. I have another novella to wrap up for you, and this one is called Kissed and Missed by Cleo White, and this is part of her Daddy Issues series that she's writing. So the first book was a Christmas novella, which I haven't actually read yet, but I'm definitely going to go back and read it. And this one is one that is centered around Valentine's Day, and I loved this one. I gave this 5 stars. This is probably my favourite one so far that I've read for this video. So in this one we follow Honor and Julian. So at the beginning of the book, Honor is going home for Christmas with her girlfriend to meet her family, and she has been with her girlfriend for 2 years, and it's been a long distance relationship, and she, as I say, is going back to meet her girlfriend's family for the first time. On the way to her girlfriend's father's house, she discovers that her girlfriend has actually been cheating on her, so they end up breaking up. But she's obviously already on the road to her girlfriend's father's house, who happens to be Julian. So she ends up spending some of the Christmas holiday at Julian's house, and he is instantly attracted to her, and she is attracted to him. But obviously, because he is her ex's dad, there is a kind of forbidden element to their relationship, and that nothing other than a kiss, nothing happens over the Christmas holiday. But they do start up a bit of a friendship and are texting back and forth quite a lot, and he is like obsessed with Honor. He wants to be with her, and he decides to fly to her town and take over. She works for a non-profit, so he donates money to this non-profit and plans to do a massive event that she is going to organise, and it is their romance, and I really enjoyed this one. It's obviously an age gap romance. I think there's about an 18-year age gap between them, and it is a ex's dad romance as well, which I love, and a billionaire romance as well, because he is very rich and he likes to spoil her. Love this one. This one is quite steamy as well, but I thought it was really well done. I really liked the relationship between Honor and Julian. I feel like although they did have kind of a physical attraction, I feel like that through the novella that did develop more so than some of the other ones that I've read. So I really enjoyed that. Definitely I'm going to go back and read the first book in this series, and there is going to be a third one, which I think is going to follow Honor's sister and her dad's business partner, which I'm really excited for. So this is a new author that I am definitely going to read more from. I know she has other books available on Kindle Unlimited as well, aside from just this series, but I think predominantly she does seem to write age gap romances, which I quite enjoy, so I'm excited to check out more of her backlist, and I would definitely recommend this one. As I say, it's definitely my favourite that I've read so far. 5 stars I gave this one, and yeah, loved it. So I want to update you on the next novella that I read, and it was called The Perfect Match by Melina McKay. I actually listened to this one on audio and I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. So this one is another FF romance, and it follows Abby and Sabine. So in this one it is set in a contemporary world, but it has a little bit of fantasy to it. So these 2 characters are cupids, and I believe the way the world's set up, I believe anyone can become a cupid, and they go through like a training program that the Greek gods kind of run. So there is mentions of the Greek gods in this book. And Abby is a newly qualified cupid, and Sabine has been a cupid for a really long time, and the goal for the cupids is to make as many perfect matches as possible. So they obviously have their arrows that they can fire at different people, and the goal is to create perfect matches. And there is a conference each year that's held in Las Vegas where they go and they find out who the cupid is that's made the most perfect matches, and for many years it has been Sabine. And these 2 characters end up meeting at their conference. It's Abby's first conference, and they end up there's a mishap with the hotel and the room gets double booked, so they end up having to share a room, and it goes from there. And I really enjoyed this one. I thought the premise of this was really interesting, in terms of them being cupids. They were kind of cupids on the side because they did have other jobs outside of being cupids. So if I remember correctly, Abby was a lawyer or something like that. She had another job as well as being a cupid, and I thought that was really interesting. So the premise I really liked. I really liked the romance. So these two meet, as I say, at the first conference, and then we follow them like a year later, and they're back at the conference, and they end up having to fake date kind of thing. So Sabina's there, and her ex-girlfriend is there with her new wife, and Sabina's obviously struggling with the fact that her ex has moved on, and so Abby jumps in and helps her by pretending to be her girlfriend. And I really enjoyed this one. The romance was really good. This is on the lower end of the spice scale, I would say, but there is still that spice element to it, but it is on the lower end, I would say. But as I say, the plot of this one, really enjoyed. This one was, I don't know how many pages it was actually. The audiobook was just over 3 hours, and definitely worth a read. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. The audiobook I listened to via Anyplay, but would definitely recommend it. There's going to be a second book in this series, I believe, following the same characters, which is coming out later on in the month of February, and I'm really intrigued to pick that one up. Looking at this author's backlist, she writes predominantly FF romances, so I'm definitely going to go back and check out some of her other books. So I want to update you guys on the last 2 novellas that I will be reading for this video. So the first one that I read was Bleed for Cupid by Aidan Pierce, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This one again is another dark romance, so I would definitely recommend checking triggers for this one. But in this one we follow Callum, who is the owner of Cupid Inc. And Cupid Inc. is a company that has developed potions for supernatural creatures to basically use on each other to make people fall in love with them. But the potions don't work on humans. But Callum is in the process of developing a potion that will work on humans, and the humans are not happy about this. And we have Robin, who is the secretary for Callum, and there has been an attraction between Robin and Callum since she started, but there is some trouble happening at the company because of this new potion that Callum is working on to work on humans. There is a lot of people protesting about it, specifically humans, and he has got a leak at the company in terms of someone is releasing private information to the humans, and he is very much keen to find out who that is. Callum is part angel, part demon, and this ends up being a romance between Callum and Robin. I will kind of spoil this one because Callum finds out that it is Robin who is the leak, and she is a little bit terrified, but also kind of turned on a little bit because she is very much attracted to Callum, and she is almost looking forward to the punishment that he is going to give to her. And this one, as I say, was really good. It is quite dark, so I would recommend checking the trigger warnings. This is part of a series of holiday novellas, so I'm definitely intrigued to go back and check out some of the other ones in this series, but overall I really enjoyed this one and would definitely recommend checking it out. Then the last one that I read for this video is My Secret Valentine Baby by Ella Good. Ella Good is an author who has been on my TBR to check out. So I read quite a lot of novellas, and there are a couple of authors who I read from quite a lot. So there's like Cassie Mint, Jessica Cain, they are very popular novella authors, and Ella Good often pops up in kind of the recommendations on Kindle Unlimited. When I look at Cassie Mint and Jessica Cain books, her books often come up as suggestions, so I was intrigued to check out her books. This one I didn't love, but it was okay. There was just there was nothing special about it, but there was nothing also that I really didn't like. So this one I gave 3 stars to. And in this one we follow, oh gosh, what was their names? Archer and Mila. And Mila, at the start of the book, she's at her friend's wedding and she takes a break from the wedding to go to the bar, and Archer buys her a drink and they basically have one night together. And the consequence of that one night is Mila gets pregnant, but she doesn't know how to contact him, so she doesn't tell him until she turns up at his office to be his new secretary. And he is obsessed with her, like obsessed. As soon as he sees that she is pregnant, he says, "We're getting married." And she's not so keen on that idea, and it is their romance. This one, as I say, was okay. Archer is like obsessed with her, like from very early on, and yeah, there wasn't really much to it because it is so short. And this one, as I say, there was definitely physical, but again, not so much the emotional. The novellas that I enjoy and like the most are the ones that develop both that physical connection and that emotional connection, which I know is quite difficult to do in, you know, such a short number of pages, but there are some authors that really do manage to do that successfully. And sadly, this was one that I didn't love. I will still probably check out more from this author, but this one was just okay for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've gone through and read quite a few different novellas. I think I read 11 in total. I initially was going to do 10, and then when I wrote the list, I think it ended up being 11. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I thought I would just do a quick wrap up of my favourite ones from this video. And these are the ones that I would definitely recommend that you check out. So Valentine for My Vampire by Honey Phillips, I really enjoyed and I would recommend. The Perfect Match by Melina McKay, Be Mind Twisted Valentine by Gianni Holmes, Kissed and Missed by Cleo White, and Bleed for Cupid are definitely my favourite ones from this video, and these authors are definitely ones I will check out more from. Some of the authors I might go back and check out from in the future, but those ones I've just mentioned, they are ones I'm definitely going to be picking up more from. And if you have any recommendations for Valentine's Day novellas or just novellas in general, any authors that you really recommend, there are some that I've read from in the past. So Cassie Mint, Jessa Kane, Lucy Darling, Mink. Try to think if there's any others that I've read. They're probably like the 4 that immediately spring to mind. But if you have any recommendations for others that write really good novellas or just have a big backlist of novellas, then please do let me know. And I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I will see you in my next one.